Welcome back to another episode of
Family Meeting.
My name is Matt Glass.
And I'm AJ Tenari.
And this is Family Meeting, the discussion-based portion of the Family Album Podcast. And we are in our first month of 2025.
That's right. So far, this block has been pretty cool.
It's been quite an interesting one. I feel like the shift between like last year and this year felt really, I don't want to say anticlimactic, but kind of just there. Yeah. It just kind of seemed like, because honestly, I missed the countdown. So,
oh, really?
Yeah.
What happened?
I didn't like actually say on the first family meeting because it was New Year's Eve when we recorded it and uploaded it.
Yes, the day of.
The day of.
Of course.
I fell asleep during the countdown.
Oh, really?
And honestly, it was okay though. It was just a weird New Year's Eve. But we're not going to talk about our New Year's Eve ventures.
No, because we have a pretty cool topic to discuss. You know, it's a brand new year, and what better way to start off that new year by talking about new albums by new artists.
Yeah, except a lot of these albums that I chose are not new by any means.
Same here.
That's very good. AJ had the idea of doing a top 5 best debut albums of all time.
Yeah, debut albums are pretty cool to kind of see where an artist begins and kind of like see the trajectory of their career blossom from like how they started to where they ended up. Sometimes they knock it right out of the park and know exactly what they want to be. Sometimes they shit the bed immediately. Sometimes it's something right in the middle. But we're taking a look at the albums that really stand tall among artist discographies that defines their sound while also putting a spotlight on what they would become.
Now, for my list, I pretty much limited it to ones that like I know I've listened to all the way through before.
Yeah.
Simply because I felt like it'd be weird if I was like, that album that I never listened to before, I'm going to talk about it.
Yeah.
Actually,
same.
It hasn't stopped me before, I guess, now that I think about it. Now that I really think about it.
Episode 13, anyone?
Yeah, hurry up, we're dreaming. I did listen to it, I just didn't care enough about it.
It's okay.
It's okay. We could do a rehash of it.
Honestly, not a bad idea.
It isn't a bad idea. I still owe you guys the season 1 ranking.
That's true.
That'll be available on our Patreon.
Somewhere down the line.
But I feel like the list, it really it jumps from genre to genre, but even a little bit in quality. But so it was a little bit hard for me to like decide this list. I knew like the first 4 straight away, and then the last one, it was a tough decision. One of them, it's going to need a lot of explaining to do, but it does count.
Gotcha.
I promise. And it's the rise and fall of the mid. No, I'm kidding.
We finally get to talk about it.
God, that'd be insane. I do actually have 2 honorable mentions.
Okay.
Maybe one. The one I could just kind of be like, it's not bad, but there was one that almost made the list.
Gotcha. What do you got?
I don't really listen to them that much anymore, strictly because like I kind of find a lot of the stuff they do now to be a bit hokey, a little bit pokey, if you will.
Dare I say, spin yourself around.
They put their left foot in, and but I still think their first album is solid. I don't listen to it regularly, but when I wanted to double check and listen to bits and pieces, I genuinely was kind of happy with what I heard still. I still think I kind of grew out of it like a little bit though. And that is Bad Blood by Bastille.
Gotcha.
Yeah,
I see.
They had a pretty good start, and I kind of wish they stayed there just a little bit. Like say what you want about their later few albums. Their starter album is honestly what they should have stuck to a little bit longer.
Yeah. When you think like the dip in quality happens with Bastille.
Unfortunately, it's my favorite of their discography, but definitely Doom Days.
Gotcha.
Wild World is very long, but Doom Days, as much as I have like a very soft spot for that album, Wild World, it's just the song, there's so much fluff that can be cut out. But I do like the instrumentals on that one though, a lot.
I see.
Still a little bit. I don't actively listen to them as much anymore.
Yeah.
I need to, I definitely need to listen to the new album.
Yeah.
I just can't do it.
Oh, you're scared?
I'm a little scared. It's called Ampersand. Like, I didn't even know you knew what that was.
No, only
like,
Tally Hall knew that.
Oh, God. Yeah. Honestly, that's one song is better than the entirety of that album, I guarantee you. But that's the one album I wanted to, like, honorable mention. Second one might surprise you a little bit.
Okay.
And that's Madonna's debut album.
Gotcha.
Like, she is a decent singer. She always has been in her career.
She's a star for a reason.
She is, truthfully. Great performer. But I will say, the tracks that she sings along to on this album, phenomenal.
Nice.
They're like genuinely like it's genuine funk of the 80s.
Gotcha.
And I fuck with it a lot.
Hell yeah.
Former guest of the show, Alec Rusky, also put me onto that album. So
Nice.
yeah. Holiday, it goes hard. It's overplayed, but it goes really, really hard.
I've heard a lot of great things about Madonna, but I never really dove into her discography that much. I just really know the hits.
It's only that album that I can truthfully recommend. Like, it sounds really good.
I see.
It does. It sounds really good.
Nice.
I wouldn't go to it to like, if you want like a nuanced story with pacing.
It's not
but,
the
like,
death consciousness of the 80s.
Oh my god, that's an album we need to talk about.
I agree.
Did you listen to it finally?
I've listened, I think I'm on the last track, and then I just never revisited it.
They are long,
Yeah.
but so worth it in my opinion. God, that might be one of the only shoegaze albums that I genuinely praise, and that's from 2008, right?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah. Look at me and my history.
Look at that.
But
Some
those are
mastery.
my mastery. Yeah. Those are my 2 honorable mentions.
I also have some honorable mentions, but these are all albums that we've actually talked about on the show before.
Interesting.
I tried to stray away from those because we already kind of like said our thoughts on them. And if I didn't go with the 5 that I went with, 2 of these would have been on that list, that being Unknown Pleasures by Joy Division and In the Court of the Crimson King by King Crimson.
Both phenomenal honorable mentions.
And of course, Weezer's The Blue Album.
It is fantastic. I almost put it on, and then when I was about to put it on, I texted AJ and went, "No Blue Album."
Yeah. It's too easy.
It's way too easy.
Yeah.
Oh my god.
But some other ones that we talked about on the show before, we have Batted Hell by Meatloaf, 10 by Pearl Jam, Mercurial World by Magdalena Bay, Are We Not Men, We Are Devo by Devo, Here Come the Warm Jets by Brian Eno, and American Football by American Football.
Almost put that one too.
Yeah. But if you want our more in-depth thoughts on those albums, go check out those episodes. They're all a lot of fun.
I will spoil one thing. One of the albums that you mentioned is on my list.
Okay.
But it's the only one that we talked about on the show that is on my list.
I see.
Yeah.
That's not bad.
It's not bad at all.
Well, with that, do you want to take it away, Matt? What's your number 5 debut album of all time?
Before we do this,
Okay.
I just need to ask, are we doing like 5, 4, or 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and then 5, 4, 3, 2, 1?
I think it flows better 5, 5, 4, 4.
Gotcha.
Does that sound good?
That sounds good.
Cool.
Without the hand gestures, this is going to be very hard to explain. But yeah, just imagine what I was doing, family heads.
Yes, send in your fan art.
Now, yeah, at MacGlass at Rule 34. The bit of January of all time.
.exe.
Okay, so my number 5, this actually might really surprise you, but I got thinking about it not too long ago because I rip on this band way too much, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
And their first album, kind of in a similar vein to Bastille, or I guess Bastille was in a similar vein to them, they should have stuck with this, and they kind of sold out to a lot of, what the sound was kind of evolving into.
Yeah.
But the thing is, and believe me, I listened through again, and it definitely,
Still holds up?
I can't even get a word out. I'm so excited. I'm stuttering all over the place. Even through this last re-listen I did, I was still kind of blown away by just like how different the instrumentals are compared to their other stuff, and how much I wish they dialed back on the over theatrics of like their later songs. I'm talking about Coldplay's Parachutes.
I see. I was thinking you were talking about Panic at the Disco for a second.
No, I
Gotcha.
actually don't really like that album.
I see.
But I'm talking about Parachutes by Coldplay. Look, a lot of the songs are really overplayed. You got Sparks, you got Yellow, all that shit, right? However, that was like the purest form of their alternative rock sound, where you could just really feel just like a lot of where alt rock was. And I like some parts of where they go later on in the future, but I think this album, in my opinion, for those who don't want to have like the Coldplay sellouty vibe haunting them from afar as they listen to X and Y, or Rush of Blood to the Head, I think that album genuinely was probably their finest work.
Gotcha.
And I mean, it did meet a lot of success.
That's true. It kind of just bolstered them up into the mainstream like immediately.
There are a lot of great tracks on here. Even though I mentioned Sparks, it is honestly kind of a good song.
Yeah.
It's very gentle, and it paces the album well to kind of have this like calmer, more gentle moment in between two really high energy songs. What's another one that I actually was going to mention? I want to say it was Trouble. Yeah, Trouble. That is on here. Shiver is fantastic. I don't give a shit what people say about that song. The guitars on that wail perfectly, and something about his vocals harmonizing with like the high pitch of the guitar. It's like perfect, honestly.
Nice.
And I know you're not the biggest fan of his voice, but I also think it's honestly here where it's not as bad, not a lot of swallow. Like it's there, but like it's less obnoxious.
I see.
Martinisms is funny. Also, I gotta say, the closer, Everything's Not Lost, it's pretty good. It's honestly one of my favorite closers. I forget if that was like a bonus thing, or the Spotify one has it as the closer, but I forget if it's like the actual closer
or
on the
bonus track.
album.
I see.
So I know it has a hidden track called Life's for Living, I believe is what it's called. But yeah, even Yellow, I have some offhand memories of that song, and I don't listen to it as much anymore, but it is a good song, genuinely. And I also like the song Parachutes itself. I think it's a great addition to the album. All the other songs I didn't mention, genuinely, I think are also pretty good, but I feel like the album flows well, and it does good as a standalone.
Very nice.
Yeah.
Well, I'm glad Coldplay could get some love on the podcast, because
Just a little bit.
I most certainly am not the one to give it.
No, I know.
Yeah.
And me saying it's their most palatable album, like, and that I think it's good, stop there, guys. Just honestly, just
it's
stop.
all downhill.
Just fucking stop after Parachutes.
Have you seen Mike the Snare's deep discog dive on them?
Yes, and they did help me lighten up a bit on Coldplay when my opinion of them was really sour.
Gotcha.
Which honestly was part of the reason why I wanted to talk about it.
Nice.
Because I think I watched that like a month or two ago. I feel like his opinions are valid.
I agree.
But at least he acknowledged that Music of the Spheres is not
Sucks.
very good. Yeah. But that is my number 5.
Very nice.
As jumbled as that could have been to get through. AJ, what is your number 5?
My number 5 is a 60s staple. We have The Doors' self-titled.
Okay.
This
awesome.
one was kind of like the pinnacle of psychedelic rock at the time, very much pioneered that genre and popularized it. Jim Morrison, like rest in peace, was a phenomenal frontman. Who just had like such like a haunting presence about him, but was also just so charismatic and captivating. And his lyricism was very introspective while also being very playful.
Yeah.
And especially when combined with like the organ, which wasn't like super common at the time, very much like solidified the sound of psychedelic rock in the 60s. And like there's all different kinds of like song concepts and the way that they use the organ to portray that in like a more playful way or a more dark way, which is very interesting. Of course, like Break On Through is an iconic song in general, a perfect album opener. Light My Fire is great.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
That's the only Doors song I think I've ever listened to, and genuinely it's phenomenal.
It's iconic. Like it's 8 minutes. There's so much great instrumental breaks, phenomenal guitar solos, the organ goes the fuck off. The overall hook is just so infectious. Alabama song Whiskey Bar was used in the movie At World's End with Simon Pegg and Nick Frost.
Oh, okay.
That's how I heard about it first and got me into this album.
I thought you meant Pirates of the Caribbean. I was about to be
close.
I was like, really?
Wait, it's not. It's just called The World's End. That's what it is.
I see.
Yeah, my bad.
I was about to be like, wait a second. I thought Hans Zimmer did his own stuff.
Dude, he collabed with Jim Morrison.
Hey,
That'd be
honestly, God, give an organ to Hans Zimmer and
he can go the fuck off.
It's over. But anyway, continue.
It's not close to that. It's almost like a bit of a shanty because it's just about drinking.
Yeah.
Like the way it has this almost like very staccato, like almost like polka feel to it, which is really fun. The end is a brilliant closer that's just like very, very dark and dreary, but like it's just so captivating to listen to as you just kind of like go through this haunting journey that's just like almost drone music at some point. The Doors is a phenomenal album that I always love to revisit, and I think it was definitely a sound they knew exactly what they wanted to do coming out of the gate, and it's very easy to see like how other people would want to emulate the sound to kind of get psychedelic rock more into the mainstream. So I think it's a very important album, and I like it a lot.
Hell yeah, man. My number 4, honestly, I'm kind of surprised in the grand scheme of things that I didn't put it higher. It's weird, like I'm surprised in myself. No, but like it could have gone higher, but I just felt like there were some albums that I really wanted to talk about more.
Yeah.
And that is The Velvet Underground and Nico.
Nice.
45th anniversary. Well, I guess not the 45th anniversary. That's the one that's on Spotify.
Yeah.
Yeah, specifically the 45th.
That one.
God.
I
No.
can't believe they labeled their 45th anniversary on their first album.
Yeah, I know. It's crazy. They had been thinking about it for 45 years, but they just decided to do it. Came out in 1967 originally. It also has the sort of pseudonym title of Andy Warhol.
Yeah.
But it's been more commonly known as either the Banana Album or
The Velvet Underground
and Nico. Yeah. I really just like the way that this album presents itself. It's kind of not abrasive per se, but super unpolished. But like where it lacks the studio
For like perfectionism.
the true studio perfectionism, I think it makes up for into some amazing lyrics and insights, and just some really fascinating instrumentals.
Yeah.
Like Venus and Furs, probably one of my favorite songs by them of all time. Like genuinely. I do love Sunday Morning because
too.
I love the like little chimes at the beginning.
Boom, boom.
Nico just adds such a presence with her voice that frankly, like the songs probably could have done well by themselves, but it makes the collab so much more purposeful because her voice is just so
bolsters
unique.
it, yeah.
I love the other stuff she did with them, like These Days and The Fairest of Seasons is the other one it's called. It's not on this album, but they did work on it together.
Yeah.
I do know that. I'll Be Your Mirror is my favorite Velvet Underground song of all time. It made it into my top 5 on my Spotify Wrapped.
Gotcha.
And I don't think a song that's so simplistic yet just so like comforting exists anywhere else. It's short and sweet, doesn't overstay its welcome, and I just love the way that Nico delivers the lines on that one. And I gotta say, like, the last 2 tracks, the Black Angel's Death Song and European Sun, also just really phenomenal as like even though they don't really sound that much alike, I think they work well as almost like a 2-part closer. Like it feels that way somehow that I can't really explain. European Sun is great though. I feel like it just rounds off the album so well with its instrumentation.
Nice.
I wanted to bring this one on the album, on the family album for a while, but like being in a good headspace to listen to it is one thing. I feel like I need to be in a good headspace to talk about it because there's just so much there, and it's a staple.
Yeah,
and like
it's an icon.
Yeah, pretty much. It's one of like the album. It's not on one of the albums to listen to before you die, is it?
It probably. I would assume it is.
I mean, it's when I was looking up on like a bunch of different debut albums that I felt like I could probably put on there. This one popped up like every single time, and I knew I loved it, so I figured I had to listen to it. But yeah, all in all, Venus and Furs, just listen to it, man.
I mean, if you do want to bring it on the show, I'd be very down because I have listened to it like a couple times before. But I feel like it's never really clicked with me like a lot. Like I like certain tracks on there, but like the overall product hasn't really grasped me. So maybe we'll have an American football situation next time you bring it on.
Maybe. Even though it's really unpolished, there's like a warmth there that I don't think I've ever really heard on a lot of other albums. Like you can tell that they genuinely enjoy the process.
There's a lot of care put into like all those tracks.
And when you can feel that above everything else, I feel like it makes up for whatever flaws that you might think it has. Not you personally. Yeah, whatever flaws you think. Where's the warmth?
I'm sorry.
No, like just generally is what I meant. But that is my number 4.
Very nice. My number 4 is another self-titled album. We have The Cars by The Cars.
That almost made it on.
Very nice.
It almost made it on. That is a great fucking album.
This album is phenomenal. Like, The Cars knew exactly what they wanted to do, like, from the get-go. And much like The Doors, they also pioneered an entire genre by doing that. Like, New Wave, they were very influential in that whole scene. With like Rico Kasich's very unique voice and very unorthodox, I guess, like demeanor and voice, like as opposed to what was popular at the time.
Oh, what are you my?
Yeah,
I love this song.
and like almost every track on here is single worthy, which is like
rare.
Such a feat.
It's fucking rare.
Yeah, like all of the Good Times Roll, Best Friend Girl, Just What I Needed, Don't Just Stop, You're All I've Got Tonight, Bye Bye Love, Moving in Stereo. Like they're all just like these could be singles. Dave Robinson's drumming I think is very underrated. It's very simple, but much like Nick Mason, he does like do exactly what it needs to do to really bolster these tracks and hold everything down. The use of keys is so infectious on here, and just like the different kind of synths like fonts they use is just like so like interesting, and it's very much like complements like the overall hook and the melodies to like, get it like stuck in your head. So favorite tracks for me are pretty much all the ones that I mentioned. I think there are a couple duds on this track, like I'm in Touch with Your World I don't really care for. I think it's too different from everything else on the album and kind of like is a little weird and just really slows everything down. And All Mixed Up is a solid closer, but it's just not as memorable as everything else on the album. But like, I love You're All I've Got Tonight. Good Times Roll is iconic. Just What I Needed is like one of the most iconic songs of the 80s. And Moving in Stereo, I adore.
Understandably.
Yeah. It's just really, really good.
Like, that album is really good. Truth be told, I confused it for another album when I said it almost made it on.
Oh, okay.
Also, that other album was not their debut album. So
is it Heartbeat City?
It's the one with Drive.
Yeah.
That album is fantastic.
That one is a good album.
I meshed the two a lot. But from the songs that you did mention, Good Times Roll is fantastic. I do very much like it as an opener. Have I listened to this album before? Huh.
If you haven't, give it a shot.
I should.
Yeah.
I know I've listened to Just What I Needed because I think when we were like in the jam band together, didn't we?
I think we tried doing it, but I don't know if we ever like completed it though.
That's fair.
Yeah.
That song is great. That's case in point.
It's fantastic. But yeah, all these tracks are just like, so it's also pretty short. It's 35 minutes.
Which is ideal.
It flies by, and it's just really fun all the way through. Berko Kasich is such like a unique personality to listen to, and he went on to produce Weezer.
He did. I was gonna bring that up, but I forgot his name.
But yeah, I think The Cars by The Cars is a great one. And it kind of sucks because they never really kind of reached those heights. Heartbeat City's up there, and Candio is really good too. But I feel like it was tough to beat that first attempt.
Yeah. No, Candio is also very, very good. But this fucking album, I need to give it a try. Sounds like.
Go for it, man.
You sold me.
There you go. Perspective, family heads.
Number 3, I knew this one had to be on my list somewhere, but placing it was really, really difficult for me. I kind of just placed it based off of like, with these albums, which ones I've listened to like the most.
Yeah.
And I felt like this one was very, very appropriate because it is Gorillaz' self-titled.
Good shit, man.
I like Demon Days, Demon Days, Demon Days, Demon Days, Demon Days.
Plastic Beach, Plastic Beach, Plastic Beach, Plastic Beach.
Humans. No, I'm kidding.
That's where it stops.
It really is. Honestly, this might be a hot take. I would take the Now Now over Humans.
I agree.
The Now Now doesn't have nearly as good songs, but the pacing, you just cannot beat it because Humans is a double LP.
It's like 8 hours.
It's insane. Anyway, Gorillaz self-titled. God, what a fucking introduction.
Underrated as hell.
There's a reason why I have a shirt with this album art on it. Like, it's fantastic.
So good.
5/4 is incredible.
Oh my god, it bangs.
It bangs so hard. I'm just gonna read down all the ones that I have liked because it's most of this album. Tomorrow Comes Today with the fucking melodica. Oh my god. Clint Eastwood is a fucking classic.
Iconic.
I listen to it, and every single time it's a no skip. Like, that's the thing about it.
All the way through.
That's like one of like 20 Gorillaz songs that are no skips for me. Punk, which is one that I don't hear people bring up very often.
Yeah.
It's kind of a weird, it's like a weirder, more I don't want to say out of place, but like obscure.
Yeah, unorthodox.
Even. Kind of like almost B-sidesy track, but I do care for it quite a lot. Soundcheck Gravity is really fun.
Yeah.
With its fucking like turntable turns. Boom. Double Bass is right after that.
I love Double Bass.
Which is phenomenal. 19-2000.
Oh, that's one of my favorite Gorillaz songs of all time.
It has a fantastic remix.
Oh my god, you the Soul Child one?
Yes.
That one's so good.
Oh my god, I listened to both of them. I watched this one because when I listened to the original, I can picture the music video in my head, so I love it.
And that's what the album cover is.
It is.
Yeah.
Them driving in the car. Dude, Gorillaz lore is fucking amazing.
It's so fun.
I feel like we need to get Tom to watch and experience Gorillaz in its entirety. Because, oh my god. The other two songs I really want to mention, Starshine, that's another one I feel like people don't really talk about as much.
That's slept on.
It's kind of a weird, again, it's another like one that's a little bit weird. And I feel like with that one, I wouldn't typically look for a song that sounds like that, really ever, but for some reason they pull it off really well.
I'm glad it exists.
And finally, my favorite song on this record is M1A1.
Yeah.
Because, did I ever tell you about the chicken story?
I don't know.
So at my high school, we had like a pageant almost for like all the senior guys. I was a sophomore helping out my friend who was a senior.
Gotcha.
Like his talent, I don't really know what made him come up with this. He wanted to dress up in like a suit and a chicken head, have me and this other guy dress up as like his chicklets.
His posse.
His chicklets, I guess. His chicken head was a lot cooler than ours. And he wanted to sing M1A1 by Gorillaz in the chicken head.
Interesting.
And in the bridge, he fought one of my other friends who was dressed as Colonel Sanders. And what has to do with the song, I have no idea. But that song and that experience, or that experience made me check out the song and play it over and over, and is what got me into Gorillaz in the first place. And I don't regret that at all. I also think of the brand that they've made for themselves. Damon Albarn, I believe is his name.
Yep. Former frontman of Blur.
Frontman of Blur. We should talk about Blur at some point.
I've never listened to their discography. I only know song 2.
I tried. I didn't really care for it. Who knows?
Perhaps we'll see.
We'll see. However, when you just think of the legacy that they created, like he was doing great with Blur, but then he and that other guy,
Jamie Hewlett.
Yes, that's his name. They made like a legacy that honestly might outlive both of them in a way.
Yeah.
Like people know the characters and instantly think Clint Eastwood or fucking Feel Good Inc.
Yep.
Or whatever. And this is the album that like started it all.
Man.
And something about it and like the story they cultivated through these characters and the songs, you gotta really just admire the first step they took with this album.
Totally.
Because it's a good first step.
It really is.
Oh my god. The music videos are so funny. Like Russell being possessed by a fucking ghost.
And dude, the Dell features are so fucking good.
They are.
Like that got me into like his solo stuff, and he's like one of my favorite rappers.
Finally, someone let me out of my cage. Oh, amazing. I knew this had to be on my list somewhere because I love Gorillaz.
Yeah, man. I'm glad you brought it up because I think it is definitely one of like the most underrated albums in their catalog.
Yeah.
And like a lot of people kind of brush it off as like a novelty, but then when Demon Days come out, they were like, no, like we're a mainstay, which is really impressive. But like all the cool like genre bendy stuff they do on that album is really impressive.
The more like punk influence is insane.
It feels like a lot more like raw and crunchy overall, which is dope. And like they're just kind of trying everything, and it all works out for the most part.
It really does. Like, even the weird obscure tracks, like they work out somehow. What's the one where it's like, shit, it has the Japanese name. It's like
it's some left hand Suzuki Method.
Yes, left hand Suzuki Method.
Yeah,
that one is wild.
That one's
as
dope.
well. I think the closer's all right, although it does like I can objectively say it's a good song. I don't really like go out of my way to listen to it like that much, but I feel like that's kind of the same with a lot of Gorillaz closers, if I'm being honest.
That's fair.
Except for maybe Demon Days, because I've listened to that album straight through all the time.
Yeah.
This album is fantastic, and people need to remember that. Remember the roots.
Exactly.
But that is my number 3, AJ.
Very nice. My number 3 is a very biased pick. I tried my hardest not to put it on here, but it is The Piper at the Gates of Dawn by Pink Floyd. I do really like this album, and the reason I didn't want to include it is because it really does not show where the band would go in the future. It's very different from like the rest of their catalog because it's very much like psychedelic art rock as opposed to progressive rock.
Yeah.
It's very silly, and I love it.
Sometimes that's good though.
Exactly. Like, it's
honestly
a very entertaining album, and they were doing a lot of things that were like were very experimental at the time. Came out the same year as The Doors as well. So like those two were kind of like, getting psyched more into the mainstream. But this one has like a lot more of like almost like a fantasy, like a sci-fi, and very like philosophical angles they look at these songs through. Like they're at the back end, there's these 4 tracks: The Gnome, The Scarecrow, Chapter 24, and Bike, which are all like almost like storytelling songs. The Gnome is like just like a Lord of the Rings ballad about this gnome named Grumble Grumble.
Love it.
The Scarecrow is like this very shuffly kind of song with like bagpipes that talks about a scarecrow. Chapter 24 talks about like Eastern philosophy with like not a shamisen, but like some kind of like other like Chinese instrument in the background. And then Bike is just pure fucking chaos.
What kind of is the sound kind of like a twangy like string kind of thing?
It's either that or like some kind of like woodwind.
I see. Okay.
Yeah. I'd have to go back.
My guess was going to be a guzheng.
I see.
But I think that's like more of not like a, it's like kind of sounds like a dulcimer, except I think you pluck up instead of hitting it down.
I see.
Like a hammered dulcimer.
I have to. Hey, maybe in the description.
Maybe.
There we go. But this album, it does kind of show where. It does show a little bit where Pink Floyd would go, at least in terms of like their experimentation and creativity with their magnum opus on this album, Interstellar Overdrive, which is 9 minutes of like pure psychedelic rock. There's like a whole ambient breakdown that happens like very early on after some really fucking awesome shredding guitars and like dope ass tom drums from Nick Mason. And of course, we have to mention Syd Barrett. This was his first of 2 albums with Pink Floyd. He absolutely kills it as a frontman, and his era of Pink Floyd is really interesting and very sad to look back on, knowing the whole story about that. But like, he definitely made his mark on the band, and it would definitely not be the same without him. But like, it's very cool going back and seeing that whole era, and getting to really appreciate like Syd's contributions to the band, because a lot of time people forget about him, which they shouldn't, because he played a very important part on where they would go. But some tracks that I love, the opener, Astronomy Domine, is great. Lucifer Sam is a very fun, almost riff on the Beatles. Matilda Mother is this another kind of like fantasy-esque song. Pow Artak H is Roger Waters' first kind of a foray into the songwriting, where he just makes a lot of noises. And then yeah, the last 4 tracks that I mentioned, the philosophy, fantasy stuff, are all fantastic. So not at all where Pink Floyd would go in the future. You can see little bits and like hints of like how their process would be, but I think it's very important to look back on at this like specific era in the band's history.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
That is honestly another intriguing sounding album, and I think I might have to check it out.
Go for it.
It's the only albums by Pink Floyd I've listened to in full are Dark Side,
Animals.
the one that we just did, Animals, and I'm actually, those might be the only 2. So
Well, there you go.
do you think this would be a necessary or like a good way to keep going in their discography, or should I maybe put something between?
I'd say something between. I feel like with Pink Floyd, there's the big 4 you have to listen to, which is Dark Side, Animals, and then The Wall and Wish You Were Here. That's like the peak of their work, and they're all amazing. Then you kind of jump around. Like if you want more of the prog stuff, go to like their 70s catalog and keep going from there. If you want more different things, go to the 60s, and then after The Walls, when things get kind of weird, where Roger Waters basically makes another solo album, and then David Gilmour takes over, and then it's more of his solo kind of stuff, so it's very different from the 70s. So you can kind of jump around, but I think after the big 4, starting with Piper is a good way to go, and then working your way up.
Cool.
Yeah.
I will definitely check it out then.
If you do, let me know your thoughts, because I fucking love this band.
You kind of sold me on that description, so I'm very intrigued now.
Hell yeah, man. I hope you enjoy.
Now, this next album, I promise you, although it technically is not a debut album, it also kind of is. I think I may have talked to you about it in a car ride not too long ago.
Okay.
But the audience was not there. So it's a great pleasure. I argue my case for Off the Wall by Michael Jackson.
Very nice.
So first of all, yes, I am aware it is not his first album. However, it is one of the first albums he had where he had direct creative control. Because keep in mind, he was making albums with the Jackson 5. He had solo stuff, quote unquote, on the side when he was a child. Off the Wall was when he really got to flex his creative muscles.
Yeah.
I believe in his early 20s. And holy shit, did he? Because like the first 7 tracks, I'd say, are phenomenal. And it really just shows like how he was really into like the groove of the 1970s, where it was going into the 80s, and just soared from there. Like I feel like the other albums that he had when he was a child in his like early teens, that was him kind of just, you know, pretending that it wasn't part of the band's
going
repertoire,
through the motions,
but like, you know, going through the motions. This album is when Michael Jackson was becoming Michael Jackson.
Exactly.
And I attribute that to a real debut album, especially since his dad and manager was abusive.
Yeah.
So therefore, I view this as like a giant step in his career. And boy, howdy is it. Its intro, Don't Stop Till You Get Enough, is a classic. This album really holds up today with its like amazing funk instrumentals.
Yeah, almost disco kind of vibes that they have all throughout.
Yeah, but like still rock in there somehow. He was always good at implementing guitars in like the perfect way. Rock With You is just a fantastic song.
Yeah.
I never get tired of that song. dun, dun, like
Sunlight.
Working Day and Night is also great.
Love that one.
That is a great one. The title track Off the Wall is also pretty fucking good.
Yeah.
I Can't Help It. It's the Falling in Love, and even Burn This Disco Out.
I like that one.
Fantastic.
I think it's a really good closer.
You know, Michael Jackson always, I like to imagine with all of his albums he did this. One time, remember when Oprah tried to embarrass him on national television?
I do not.
Oh yeah, well she tried to embarrass him on national television.
I see.
And kind of failed epically.
Gotcha.
Because Michael
That's
Jackson, people think he was like, oh yeah, Michael Jackson. Reality, Michael didn't give a fuck.
Yeah.
He was kind of gangsta.
Nice.
Like low key. Apparently that voice was like a fake voice that he put on, and he
Oh.
actually had a really deep voice.
Oh, interesting.
Which is kind of insane. I guess you could have that amount of vocal like malleability,
Yeah.
or pliability, whatever you want to call it, when you've been singing since you were like 10, maybe even younger. So that's really interesting. But what I'm trying to get at is the way Michael would dive into his process of how he'd make songs. He would make song demos first by like sounding out all the instruments with his mouth, and then telling his guitarist like, can you do it like this, and record it all on top of each other. Like he would make drum beats like with his mouth, and that's how he would fucking like make the starts to songs.
Dude, he's like Captain Beefheart.
Oh boy.
But like with talent.
I have never listened to that. Them.
That's not gonna lie, that could be a contender for Tom Hates albums.
Oh boy.
Their critically acclaimed, polarizing album, Trout Mask Replica. So stay tuned, family heads.
Stay tuned. I got worried it was going to be an album that might be a contender into something else that we'll get to at the end of the episode.
That we will.
You probably have already seen it by now, but we'll get to it and talk about it at the end of the episode.
Yes.
Case in point, Off the Wall. It's phenomenal. It's not his technical debut under his name, but it really is for
Yeah.
the persona that would become
Michael Jackson.
Michael Jackson. So I felt like I needed to include it at 2. Almost became 1, but I felt like by technicality, I can't put a non-debut album by discography number at number 1.
That's valid.
Yeah.
I mean, that's fair enough. I think it's a great album. One that I love revisiting. It's just a really fun romp all the way through.
And it's tight, too.
It is very
That's the
tight.
thing about it that I really love. But yeah, AJ, what is your second to last?
My second to last is Illmatic by Nas.
Okay.
This is like literally one of the rap albums of all time. Like it's very important, very monumental, kind of put East Coast hip hop back on the map at a time when West Coast was taking over. And Nas was 20 when he wrote this, and it is still considered his best album that he's ever written.
God damn.
He's written like bangers like since, but this is like still like very acclaimed. It's, I would assume, in like the 1,001 albums to listen to before you die. But it's brilliant. Basically, kind of cataloging his life growing up in New York with some like the tribulations of like the gang life and the warnings and whatnot. See our episode about the infamous Mobb Deep for more on that.
Oh man.
But the samples are like very fantastic. They're funky, and they kind of detract from, or not detract, but they kind of juxtapose Nas's darker lyrics and storytelling, which he is a fantastic storyteller. Basically, just kind of showing the horrors of living in like poor like New York. Some bangers are NY State of Mind, Life's a Bitch, which is really fantastic, with his really fun, upbeat, funky instrumental, just talking about the inevitability of death and just like how you could die at any minute. The World Is Yours is great. I love Halftime and Memory Lane, and It Ain't Hard to Tell is like one of the best rap closers of all time. I think this album is phenomenal front to back. Nas knew exactly what he wanted to do. He really put himself and the East Coast back on the map and got a lot of big names brought up, including Q-Tip from Mobb Deep.
Yeah.
Based off that, and I think it's just kind of incredible that he did this at such a young age.
Illmatic?
Yeah,
I will have to check it out.
I think you'll enjoy it. It's very good, and Nas is also like one of my favorite rappers. He's fantastic.
I've been listening to a lot of rap and hip hop in the last year, as a lot of y'all have known, and I've tried to make aware. But I don't think I've listened to a lot of like the founding hip hop albums.
Yeah.
So I think I really need to like get on some of that.
There's a lot of good shit in the early 90s. But Matt, this will bring us to our number 1 debut album of all time.
Yes, it will. I tried to get this album to not be on my list and not be number one because we've talked about it already. But I really just cannot beat around the bush how good this album is, and that is Bat Out of Hell by Meatloaf.
Hell yeah, man.
Dude, like, no matter where I tried to put this on my list, I was like, no, it's not better than this. Is not better than this. This is like, I don't know what fucking drugs or whatever they shot up in their veins to make an album that is, one, paced so fucking well, two, full of energy, three, feels so sincere, four, just has the utmost like care and attention to all the instrumentals, and five, has like the best opener and two of the best openers and closers that I've ever listened to in like my rock journey. This album has followed me since high school. That sounded a lot more ominous than I intended it to sound. In a good way, I invited it to follow me.
Because you were all revved up and ready to go.
I really was. Even though that's not one of my favorite songs on the album, but I still very much like it. Honestly, from start to finish, each song is great. Heaven Can Wait even grew on me a bit.
Nice.
Like, it's a great track. I'd say All Revved Up is still the weakest, in my opinion, out of all of them.
Okay.
But, like, Bat Out of Hell, fucking, you took the words right out of my mouth. Paradise with the Dashboard Lights, unironically, every time is a no skip.
True.
It's a no. I sing along to the whole thing. It's one of the only albums. Actually, there's actually quite a few that I know the words to, but this one, I'm pretty sure I know the words to like every single song on here. I said Bat Out of Hell is incredible, right?
Oh, yeah.
It's fantastic. Rory Bittan is one of the most phenomenal pianists I've ever listened to of all time. Seeing him live, it looks like his fingers aren't real. Like, that's the only way. Like, it looks like they animated his fingers.
They're just blurry.
Literally redacted. Rory Bittan, offensive. Yeah, no. Fucking 2 out of 3 ain't bad.
Oh,
one of the
ballad.
slowest songs on the record, still perfect. Like Jim Steinman and Michael Lee Aday, also known as Meatloaf, they just knew what to do straight from the get-go.
Yeah.
And it's not like this project was easy. Like, after the production of this, Meatloaf quite literally lost his voice and got sick. And he even said in interviews at the time, in the 70s, he wasn't ready for the intensive nature of recording this album. But boy, did it pay off. And just all the way down, you go to the closer, fucking For Crying Out Loud, which it might be my top 3 favorite Meatloaf songs of all time.
Nice.
I think it just works so well as a closer.
Yeah.
You go through this journey already of stories that aren't really interconnected, but almost feel interconnected.
Yeah, there's each one almost like tells like a whole story because like the theatrical nature is just brilliant.
It is.
Yeah.
And like, I had to put this here because honestly, I've never seen an album where it peaked so fucking high and then nothing that the band or the artist could do could top it even remotely.
Yeah.
Like, Dead Ringer is good. We've talked about it.
We have.
It is a pretty solid album. Its best song couldn't even match the height of Bat Out of Hell's worst song. Like, I'm sorry. It just,
unfortunately.
And it is unfortunate. But you can't. The album soared to such great heights like on all fronts that it's just impossible to even match to that hype. So
where are you going to reach the top?
You really, bop, bop, bop to the top, you know? High School Musical. But every single time I try to put this lower, I was like, no, I can't. Gorillaz higher than this. I was like, I can't. Not when the fucking...
Bastille, okay, get the fuck out of here. But that was even an honorable mention.
It's kind of wild that it was, but I feel okay saying that. They did have a good start.
Good for them.
But yeah, that is my number one. I think this album, in terms of the ones that I've listened to, and in terms of like just the intensive care, genuine, and just in terms of like how often I listen to it, it's unmatched.
Yeah, I can see why.
Like, oh my god.
If you want more of our in-depth thoughts, check out our Tom Hates albums on Bat Out of Hell, an album that Tom actually liked.
I also very much enjoyed editing, listening to that album. I can give you the Matt history of that process.
The Matt-story.
Yeah. But yeah, that is my number one before I talk anymore.
Very nice, and I can very much agree. My number one, I don't know if you heard of this album, is called Since I Left You by the Avalanches.
Is that the one?
Yep. Yep. Oh,
I
actually,
love that album.
That's their follow-up album.
Follow-up album.
Wildflower.
I know that album.
That one is good.
And they are fantastic.
Yes.
But AJ, fucking go off. I want to hear about this album.
Since I Left You is an incredible example of plunderphonics used to perfection. I believe they used over 10,000 samples to craft it, so much so that they can't remember what they used to make this album.
That's remarkable.
Which is really funny. But the sheer creativity and just positive feelings this album exudes are very infectious, and the way it's constructed is simply masterful. There are so many unique soundscapes that expand and evolve, creating mesmerizing hooks built out of samples you would never expect to work, but somehow they do. Like on one of the biggest tracks, Frontier Psychiatrist uses like movie clips with this like the hook being like a horse whinny, but like it's so catchy and has this like bombastic like orchestra and like choir backing it up.
That's awesome.
It's so phenomenal. The opening track is just like so heartwarming. Like it just feels like you're in paradise when you listen to it. Flight Tonight is a really cool like almost hip-hop-esque kind of sample beat with like very with the hook being based off repeated vocals. Electricity is a really pleasant instrumental orchestral track. I think you would actually really enjoy this album.
I've listened to Avalanches before, if you couldn't tell by that
your rendition of Because
rendition.
I'm Me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I very much see a lot of what you're saying embodied in the other tracks I've listened to, so I'd be very intrigued. I've never checked out the discography, just like
it's very
songs.
short is the thing, because like between this album and Wildflower, I think it was like 16 years.
Damn.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
Which is kind of wild. And then they released another one in 2020, which isn't like as well regarded, and they haven't released anything since, I believe. But yeah, they take their time with their work to really kind of like make sure that it's exactly what they want, and you can see it pays off and as early as their debut.
That's wild.
Yeah. I think this is definitely one to check out, because this is always an album I love just putting on whenever either I feel down, I feel happy. Just throw this album on. It'll just feel good.
That one that I was singing the song from, I had wanted to listen through that one and possibly bring it on because
man.
It seemed like it was pretty good, and then like I'd never heard a bad thing about the name Avalanches. So yeah, maybe I should listen to the other one and we should talk about it.
I'd be down. I do like Wildflower too. Great album.
Well, AJ, this has been a great episode. Wait, no, I don't do that yet. We gotta say.
Oh, we have some announcements.
We do. Yes.
But conclusion. Debut albums are pretty cool.
That's what I was trying to go for, and I realized it sounded like I was leading us out. Yeah, fuck everything else. We're just gonna go for it. We do have an announcement to make.
That we do.
You probably already saw on our Instagram, but we are in the middle of the Bad Album Bowl.
That we are.
For those who don't know what the Bad Album Bowl is, check our Instagram first of all. I made an actual post for it so that you can
we have
see
content.
It. We do have content. Yes, finally. I came up with this idea where we do a bracket tournament style of the worst albums, in which all of you guys are going to vote on our Instagram stories, and whichever ones get whittled down this week and next week, because it'll be 16 this week, 16 the next week, 32 total. The last two surviving albums are going to be the albums we talk about in the beginning of March.
Yes.
And AJ and I could not be more excited about it.
We are thrilled. We have so many headliners.
We could possibly
in this album.
We could be listening to The Wall by the Nostalgia Critic.
Dude, you thought Pink Floyd's was good? Just you wait.
I've never listened to it, but I've heard the
brother.
I heard someone describe that album as I hate music, like the guy just hates music or whatever.
Yes. If that album does win, we have to watch the review that goes along with it.
Okay.
Because it is regarded as one of the worst YouTube videos of all time.
AJ, why don't we read a couple of the contenders on here?
We got a lot of all-stars, man, so please.
We have 32 total. The ones that I cross-referenced 5 different websites to find. I tried to make sure they were ones that like weren't just like brain rot shit on the internet in the brain rot era. Leather Jackets by Elton John, that's one of them. Rebirth by Lil Wayne, which I've heard horrible things about that album. Willpower by Will.i.am is another one. What is it called?
We got Kevin Federline's debut.
Kevin Federline, Chinese Democracy by Guns N' Roses. I think I've listened to bits and pieces. What was it?
Attila's self-titled.
The supergroup Lord Such, which I believe was it a Frank Zappa supergroup?
I'm not sure.
Or it might be a different. It's a supergroup of some people. What else we got?
Songs of Innocence.
We got fucking 8 by Incubus, which I've heard that album sucks.
Interesting.
Ass. Let's see what else. Music from the Elder by Kiss. Cherry Pie by Warrant.
Angelic to the Core by Corey Feldman.
Speeding Bullet to Heaven by Kid Cudi.
Damn, I forgot about that one.
Metal Magic by Pantera, and so much more.
Yeah.
There was another one that was going to make it on, and that was going to be Metal Machine Music. But I decided, since that one will be appearing soon.
Check in next week about that one.
Next week, yes. Since that one will be appearing soon, I was like, all right, we don't have to do that one. I also did not put Lulu on here, even though I hear that album also really sucks. So, yeah, because that's Lou Reed and Metallica.
It is, yeah, their collab.
And I've heard it's fucking awful.
So have I, but I never listened to it.
I didn't want to have too many of the same artists.
Yeah. Give some variety.
Get some variety. But look forward to that. We're going to do the voting each day, and whoever the last one is by the end of this week will be the first contender for the Bad Album Bowl.
Yes, sir, ma'am, non-binary pals.
Yeah, we need to come up with a good nickname.
Them.
Yeah.
They are.
Them.
Them. But yeah, go on there and vote. If you want us to review a really shitty album specifically, go support it, go back it. And yeah, participate.
Torture us, guys.
Exactly.
Really.
We're asking for it.
We're asking for
Literally.
it. But if we got nothing else, this has been a phenomenal episode of
Family Meeting.
As always, my name is Matt Glass.
And I'm AJ Tenari.
And we will see you next week with a regular episode. Peace!